There are approximately 6.6 million domestic workers over the age of 15 employed in the Arab states, representing around 8.7% of the total number of domestic workers globally. The sector represents a significant proportion of employment in the region, accounting for 12.3% of total employment. The significance of this sector is even more stark in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, where domestic work accounts for between a fifth and a quarter of the labor force in most countries. While men outnumber women as domestic workers in the region, domestic work is a very important sector for female employment, with domestic workers representing 32.4% of female employment in the Arab states. The majority of migrant domestic workers in the Arab states originate from Asian and African countries such as Sri Lanka, the Philippines, Bangladesh, Nepal, India and Ethiopia. These workers play a crucial role in the global economy and society, and the remittances they send home contribute to the welfare of their households. According to estimates compiled by the International Labour Organization in 2019, there are millions of migrant domestic workers in Arab Gulf countries. Saudi Arabia alone has more than 3 million, so these percentages represent huge numbers of women. The vast majority of domestic workers are women. The total number of male and female domestic workers rose to 3.97 million, including 2.73 million men and 1.25 million women, distributed across many professions, most notably servants and house cleaners, drivers, cooks and food providers, guards of houses, residential and commercial buildings and rest houses, home managers, home gardeners, home nurses, tailors, and private teachers. 2 years ago, the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development began implementing a fee of Saudi Riyadh 9,600 annually for each additional domestic worker, exceeding 4 workers for a Saudi individual, or exceeding 2 workers for an expatriate. The ministry has given an exemption in this with regard to humanitarian cases that require more than the permissible limit, including those with disabilities, chronic and serious diseases, and other diseases. The General Authority for Statistics announced recently that the labor force participation rate for Saudis and non-Saudis stood at 66.6% during the third quarter of 2024, recording an increase of 0.4 percentage points compared to the second quarter of 2024. The Saudi labor force participation rate also increased in the third quarter of 2024 by 0.7 percentage points, reaching 51.5%, recording an annual increase of 0.7 percentage points. While the Saudi employed population ratio increased by 0.2 percentage points, reaching 47.4%. Recording an annual increase of 1.1 percentage points. Close to 20% of all domestic workers are migrant workers, according to the International Labour Organization. Most of these domestic workers are women, and they are particularly common in Gulf countries such as Saudi Arabia. Kenya sends a lot of domestic workers to Gulf countries. More than half of the over 87,784 Kenyans employed in the Middle East since 2019 have been domestic workers. But many women returning from this work describe horrific circumstances, particularly in Saudi Arabia, and in an alarming number of cases, death. Saudi households are highly dependent on housemaids from African and South Asian countries. There have been reported cases of domestic abuse in which families mistreat their maids, who have then attacked the children of their employers. Rizana Nafeek was a domestic worker in Saudi Arabia who was executed for the murder of 4-month-old Naif al-Kuthaibi. Rizana Nafeek was among the approximately 1.5 million women, mostly from Sri Lanka, Indonesia and the Philippines, working in private homes in Saudi Arabia. While some are treated well, domestic workers in Saudi Arabia enjoy fewer legal protections than any other type of workers, and human rights groups have documented abuses. Rizana Nafeek was born on the 4th of February 1988 in Muttur, Sri Lanka. Nafeek was allegedly 17 years old when she arrived to work in Saudi Arabia. Nafeek, holder of passport number N033185, arrived in Riyadh on the 4th of May, 2005 to work as a housemaid in the household of her sponsor, Naif Jizian Khalif Al-Otabi, and was transferred by her sponsor to work in his family household in Dawadmi. She began work as a domestic helper in Dawadmi, about 400 kilometers from Riyadh. Her life changed on the 22nd of May 2005. Her employer's 4-month-old child Naif Al-Kuthabi died while in Nafeek's care. Nafeek was accused of murdering the child by smothering him following an argument with his mother. Nafeek claimed that she believed the baby had choked on a bottle by accident during feeding. The baby's parents and Saudi police insisted that Nafeek was guilty of murder, and she was found guilty in court. The media released a statement that there was no post-mortem to determine for certain the cause of its death of the baby. Rizana Nafeek allegedly signed a confession, but her lawyers argue that the confession was made under duress and, more importantly, Nafeek had no access to a translator during the initial questioning after she was arrested in 2005. In Saudi Arabia, confessions are typically written in Arabic and signed by fingerprint. Nafeek signed an affidavit on the 30th of January 2007 stating that the confession had been coerced. She maintains that it was an accident caused by her inexperienced efforts to save the baby from choking. Nafeek, who spoke no Arabic, was reported to have initially confessed to the murder during interrogation, but has since retracted her statement, arguing it was made under duress following a physical assault. She said the baby died after choking while drinking from a bottle. Human rights groups said her trial was a farce as she had no translator and no lawyer until after being sentenced. On the 16th of June 2007, Nafeek was imprisoned and sentenced to death. In October 2010, according to a senior official of Sri Lanka's External Affairs Ministry, Charles, Prince of Wales, appealed to the Saudi king, seeking clemency for Nafeek. Despite an appeal from the government of Sri Lanka, Nafeek was beheaded on the 9th of January 2013. Estimates that only about 10% of all domestic workers, about 5.3 million people, are covered by labor laws to the same degree as other workers. In Sri Lanka itself, the execution has rekindled debate about the safety of expatriate workers in the Middle East and about the poverty which drives people including Miss Nafeek to seek work abroad. Child abuse through maids in the kingdom has been recently on the rise. In 2001, an Asian maid poked a child's eye out because he was noisy. The maid admitted her crime. Other incidents range between murder crimes, robbery and practicing juggling and magic. Thank you for watching Death Row.